Adam, for that nice introduction, and it's great to be here, everyone. I'm really delighted to share with you what I've learned over the last 10 years about protecting our planet. And since this is a Williams event, I'd like to say it all started for me at Williams. And it was a direct shot to my environmental career. But you heard it wasn't exactly like that. I was an English and economics major. I had a great experience at Williams. And after Williams, went to Japan and began a business career. And for the next 30 years, I worked in finance in Japan and New York. But thinking back on this, there was one experience at Williams that maybe did kind of foreshadow what I'd be doing. You'll all recall we had those distribution requirements. So I remember very vividly, even today, my sophomore year, needing some science credits, I took a course on how to address some of the world's biggest environmental challenges. And I wrote a term paper on using market forces to address the ozone challenge. And it's almost eerie that what I wrote in that paper, I'm not saying it was such a good paper, but what I wrote is remarkably similar to what I advocate for today as the head of the Nature Conservancy. Further, the class had a great professor, none other than Professor Bill Mumau, who's one of our speakers today. On top of that, Bill's also a trustee for the Nature Conservancy. So who knows, maybe it all did really start for me back at Williams. Anyway, how did I become an environmentalist? Again, you heard in Adam's nice introduction, I'm a city person. My wife Amy is kind of a city person too. But as parents, we started making an effort to get our kids exposed to the outdoors. And we went on little trips with guides. And interestingly, even though I was quite grown up, myself, Amy, and all four of our kids, we all fell in love with nature. I think that's noteworthy because I believe there's an inner environmentalist in everyone. And one of our jobs at TNC is to help people discover their inner environmentalists. I was also one of those business people who believed that business can be, and should be a force for good. So those interests came together for me, using business to do important good things, environmental challenges, and in my last job at Goldman Sachs, I started the firm's environmental effort. We looked for kind of win-win opportunities. How could businesses improve themselves and at the same time find environmental progress opportunities? And the more I looked, the more I found. I got so excited about that, I pursued the Nature Conservancy job, and lo and behold, I got it. The happiest day of my professional life. So then I come to the Nature Conservancy and I say, well, let's take stock on how we're doing. So I began, just like you would expect, to review the Nature Conservancy's projects all around the world. We're a very global organization. So I'm going through the projects one by one, and I'm extremely impressed. And I think you'd have the same experience. If you looked at our projects, you'd say, well done. Or as a business person, when I thought about the Nature Conservancy as a nonprofit, our operating budget is $600 million a year. We can only work because we depend on and benefit from extraordinarily passionate and generous supporters. And then I looked at some of the peer organizations, other environmental organizations that we work closely with, and they were very good too, in my judgment. So on the one hand, I concluded when I started, the environmental movement has a lot to be proud of. Now, I was brand new, but everybody involved, the team, the donors, the volunteers, our partners in government and business, were getting a lot done. On the other hand, though, when we looked at the data, and we pride ourselves on being a science-driven organization, when we looked at the data, it didn't tell as good of a story. Think of all the things that the Nature Conservancy would want to protect. Tropical forests, beautiful watersheds, coral reefs, oyster reefs, fisheries, biodiversity itself. Well, we can measure all those things, and we do, and sadly, they're all in decline. Or think about something we would like to see less of, like greenhouse gas emissions. Even though I think the environmental movement is doing a pretty good job of addressing climate change, we still have to face facts that, notwithstanding our efforts, greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise. And when we look ahead, things look only more difficult. The population will grow from today's 7 billion to something like 9 to 10 billion people by 2050. And we have to factor in the challenges of an ever more stressed climate. So I concluded, even though environmentalists had a lot to be proud of, somehow we had to take our game up another level. Because you could say we were winning lots of battles, but perhaps losing the war. In particular, I thought we needed three things: more people on our side, more money on our side, and a better dialogue. Now, why more people? I already noted, we have great supporters. We love our supporters. We think they're the best people in the world, but we need people beyond that audience. It's especially true when I'm working here in Capitol Hill and we're trying to get the attention of our congressmen and congresswomen and senators. We need a bigger constituency behind us in our effort to protect nature. Money. Again, we nonprofits raise staggering amounts of money. I'm sure some of you today in the room support the Nature Conservancy or other organizations like us. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. But protecting the world is a capital-intensive enterprise. We need even more money. And then finally, dialogue. I think environmentalists don't always get this right. Again, good people, well-intentioned people, passionate people. Sometimes that passion, though, gets in the way a little bit. We environmentalists are sometimes pretty quick to criticize. Sometimes we even vilify. It's true, there are some bad guys that on occasion we should campaign against, but I think we overdo that a little bit. And I thought we were kind of losing bigger segments of society through this kind of tougher approach to things. So the strategy that I really chose to emphasize, and Adam mentioned this, and it won't surprise you because I'm a former investment banker, we decided to really put an emphasis on investing in nature. Just like Adam said, you can think of nature as infrastructure that does these wonderful things for us. It provides us a stable climate, the clean air and healthy water we drink, habitat for biodiversity, outdoors places for recreation or spiritual reflection. And so it seemed to us, and to me in particular, that if we could better articulate the investment case, we could get more people on our side, have more investment dollars to work with, and have a much better dialogue between environmentalists and everyone else. Rather than troublemaking or fault-finding, instead we'd roll up our sleeves and solve problems together. I'll give you one or two examples, but I did write a book about this. And and it's interesting to me, everywhere I look, I see these win-win opportunities. But here's one or two examples. Just when I was joining the Nature Conservancy, our team in Quito, Ecuador, had learned that the water company, the municipal water company, was about to make some really serious sized investments in plant and equipment to secure the clean water they would need for their rapidly growing city. So our local team of scientists approached the water company and they made a business argument, not a science argument or an environmental argument. We said, you can save money by investing in nature instead of investing in plant and equipment. And so the way we did this, first TNC coughed up some money and the water company, just a little bit of money. We went upstream. We helped ranching and farming communities change their practices so that we could better protect the watershed. We were trying to keep the cows out of the river, prevent sedimentation, these kinds of things. We know how to do it. And it worked. And so then we raised some more money from the local Coke bottler and the local brewer, more evidence that it was working. And so then we got the regulatory authority for the water company to charge everyone in their water bill a fee for conservation. Now, had the plant and equipment been built, there would have also been a charge for customers. It would have been even higher. But this time on everybody's water bill, it said conservation charge. And voila, that's right when I showed up. I said, this is almost too good to be true. It was conservation that pays for itself. A little bit of startup capital got the flywheel turning. And now we have everybody in Quito paying for conservation through their charge. So we have more people on our side, we have more money, and we have this better dialogue I'm talking about. No, there was no fault finding, there was no criticism. Rather, environmentalists, scientists, business people, government people, the water company, we came together, upstream communities, and solved a problem, and it works. That water fund is thriving. Furthermore, we now have something like 35 of these so-called water funds across Latin America. We're exporting that to Africa and all around the world. It really works. I should tell you about Quito, that upstream watershed area that we were protecting for purposes of securing water. It's the Biocondor Reserve of Ecuador. So we would have wanted to protect it for old-fashioned conservation reasons, and maybe we could have done so if we had had a big fight or we'd raised a lot of money and tried to buy it, but those would have been difficult. Instead, we did it through this investment-oriented way, and it really worked. And we're doing lots of business along these lines. Sometimes it surprises people. We partner with companies like Dow Chemical, China Three Gorge Dam Company, Cargill. This always raises some eyebrows. These are companies with big environmental footprints. But our reasoning is if we can use our science and know-how and show those businesses how to do business in a different way where both business outcomes and environmental outcomes are improved, that's a way we can really scale progress. One of those examples, for example, with Cargill, just about everybody agrees saving the Amazon is as important as anything else an environmentalist could do. The biggest threat to the Amazon was deforestation resulting from expansion of soy agriculture, first with Cargill's help, then with other international companies, then with the government and local farmers. We created together a soy moratorium, and all soy-related deforestation in the Amazon has been brought almost to a halt. Another one of these win-wins. So what have I learned? I came to the job thinking that these kind of market-oriented, business-based approaches could solve everything. It turns out I was wrong. As I reflected on the progress we had made, but where we also still had trouble, it dawned on me that I was a little bit wrong when I was thinking this kind of, wonky business approach of mine could solve all the problems. All of this that I just mentioned was necessary but insufficient. And as I worked in this job longer, I came to understand that our big breakthroughs come when people lead from the heart and the mind. And our great accomplishments always come down to one or two people, sometimes prominent people, CEOs, sometimes folks we wouldn't have heard of, lower level volunteers, but they act with real compassion. These are people who care about others. They even, in our case, care about other species. They care about future generations, and they act with their minds and their hearts, and that's when big things happen. That's the big thing I've learned in my job. Now, sometimes when I give a talk like this, people say, well, Mark, great, good for you. You're the CEO of the Nature Conservancy. Or these companies you work with, those CEOs, they're in a position to really do something. But what can I do? That's a question people always ask me, and I love that question. Because from my vantage point, there is so much you can do. It just takes a little bit of imagination and a little bit of hustle. Examples. Many of you are business people. I've not come across one business now in more than 10 years that can't find these win-win opportunities. Do more for the environment and improve your business at the same time. You're all citizens. Everywhere in the world, we need a more enlightened government on our side. Engage in politics. Push your elected officials to do the right thing. Many of you are parents or your aunts and uncles. We need young people on our side. Help build a conservation ethic with young people. Or get to know your friendly NGO, volunteer. It can change your life. Now let me close with one thought. There's one other thing I've learned. This is truly the biggest thing I've learned, and I've learned this with my wife, Amy, who I think is out there. One of my jobs, just like with Adam, one of my jobs, of course, is to be attentive to the Nature Conservancy's great supporters. And nonprofits like ours, a lot of our most generous supporters are people who are getting older in life. So Amy and I often go to events where, and a lot of these people now are dear friends of ours. So we're at these social events with people, good friends of ours, many of whom now are in their late 80s. And when we leave these events, Amy and I, we always remark to ourselves, that was amazing. It was a fun evening, but Mr. X or Miss Y, they were the most fun people to be with. They were the liveliest, most engaged, most inspired. Indeed, they seemed to be the most youthful. Why is that? And what Amy and I have concluded is these people, these friends of ours, these supporters of TNC, they've discovered the secret of a joyous life. Find a cause you really care about, perhaps the environment, perhaps another. Give it your all, dig in, care about others, act out of compassion, and you'll discover the secret to a long, joyous life. And in that way, if you work with organizations like us, you can not only save the environment, you can save yourself too. Thank you very much.